AI Realized, the podcast about everything that is new, now, and next for enterprise executives deploying AI. Hosted by myself, Christina Elwood, and my collaborator, David Yakobovich.
Our guests will share what's driving AI adoption, use cases, and business models for the data and AI economy.
Where the future is bright.
Welcome to AI Realized, the podcast for enterprise executives leading AI deployments. From tackling security, data, and operational challenges to navigating organizational transformation, AI deployment offers a unique opportunity to redesign our organizations from the inside out. I'm Christina Elwood, your host for today's episode, and we're talking today with Shomit Ghose, the partner at Clear Vision Ventures. Shomit, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Christina. So happy to be here.
It's always a pleasure. I should mention that you have written a couple of really interesting articles that we have republished in our AI Realized Now newsletter that I encourage our readers to avail themselves of. And those are really talking about the trade-offs associated with technology. So there's never been a technology that has been invented that doesn't have a downside. Tell us a little bit about your perspective of the downside of AI agent systems.
So first of all, they have tremendous economic impact, tremendous positive impact in business. We can anticipate that they're going to get rolled out all over the place for all manner of applications, everything from healthcare to doing ERP. Of course, because it provides all of this economic efficiency. On the downside, the same technology that enables that positive power is also a pretty large risk surface. And this is what we need to be cognizant of and guard against, because as we deploy this more and more broadly, we're also creating risk more and more broadly. And we need to be aware of what those risks are. Some of those are on the obvious side, some of them are more subtle, but we cannot enter into this fray uninformed.
Clearly, that points to some unique governance, security, even buyer beware elements when you're using these agents. Talk to me a little bit about how you think about the challenges of responsibly managing AI agent systems and how you are seeing it play out in your portfolio companies at Clear Vision.
Yeah, so first of all, within our portfolio, we're just starting to see the first deals that are being considered that are employing these sorts of technologies. So you don't currently have one company we invested in solely because of this, but we do have portfolio companies that are starting to embrace the agentic AI technology. And I think we'll continue to see that happen. The risks here, first and foremost, I think all of us need to be aware of what the risks are, either as users or as purveyors of the technology. The risks can be pretty profound, and there are small effects that might happen. Something might be hallucinated, and that might enter into your chain of thought. As well, there are bigger effects of when you're getting adversarial prompting and prompt injection and all manner of other things that have actually nothing to do with the human adversarial attack, but are emergent features of the underlying AI technology.
Indeed, we can envision a situation where we have an agent talking to another agent and manipulating that agent to reveal information or take actions, including purchasing things or exfiltrating data and so forth without our knowledge. And that's a pretty frightening thought. Do you envision specific kinds of technology being developed that will help us to have a visibility to what these agents are doing, or to be able to shut them down, or to have some kind of guardrail on them, or some way to prevent that type of thing from happening?
Yeah, so many things are being attempted. It's not clear that they will, in the end, be sufficient. But one way that the listeners might think about this is that, let's say you're dealing with humans, you're trying to book your vacation to Hawaii for the summer, and you talk to your travel agent. Do you trust your travel agent? If that's the case, that's great. But your travel agent, in turn, has to contact the car rental agent and the hotel booking agent and the airline booking agent. And what if one of those individuals is secretly stealing your credit card number? So the risks may be embedded far beyond the agent with whom you're engaging. And the same is true with agentic AI. And agentic AI, because it will be for us, it will be a fire and forget an application, we may not be able to provide the scrutiny at each of these steps. Agentic AI also, as we know, works off chain of thought, which requires that each thought, every step that's being executed, must be aligned. For all you're dealing with an agent, an AI agent, and it's executing 20 steps on your behalf. Are all 20 steps aligned with what your objectives were? And the agent may be interacting with other AI agents. And are all the steps that they are engaging in on your behalf, are those two aligned? And how do you ensure that? How do you assure that? So the problem ramifies pretty quickly. And this is why we need to have awareness as users, but as architects, we need to make sure that we're trying to guardrail execution as much as possible. Different techniques are being used. Probably have heard of the constitutional classifiers that Anthropic came up with. That's a very clever technique. Lots of adversarial red team testing is being done. And yet we continue to see, it seems every day, we see yet another example of either an adversarial hack that works or emergent misalignment that just emerges out of the AI unprompted.
Yes, I absolutely do read about these every single day. And it is good that we have some vendors who are looking at how to develop those protections. We also have it happening in the academic world as well. I think one that comes to mind is the Nanda project that Ramesh Vaskar is leading out of MIT, where they're trying to build the next generation infrastructure for the Internet of Agents. And they include some of these very issues. They're trying to account for how do you register your agent? How do you declare what the agent does? How do you provide the guardrails and identify misbehavior, things like that? So there are things happening in the academic world too, but it seems like it's not really, agents are really not ready for prime time from a security and governance point of view. And the example you gave about my travel agent, for example, I have consumer protection laws that say that if somebody does use my credit card without my permission, I have a finite limit to how much I'm responsible for. We have no such thing for agents. And if we were to have an agent use our information without our knowledge, we also have no defensibility for not being culpable because we're responsible for our own agents, or at least that's the assumption in law. We'll have to see whether that holds up or not. But I think seems like it's premature to be using these for things like financial transactions. Using them for internal use between systems seems like a very good place to start, where you have control over the environment. It's a bounded environment. There's a security perimeter, or security system, if it's not literally a perimeter, and you have control over the systems themselves. Would you agree that we should be using these first in a private setting before we start to unleash them on the unwary public?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Christina. I think that's really the point here, is that we have to be very judicious in how we use it. Just because it provides this tremendous economic boon to us does not mean that we should embrace it willy-nilly. Start small. Start off with Python calling APIs on your favorite GPT, but start small and understand the risks as you go along. And as you remarked earlier, if there's anything of substance that has to be done, a decision that affects, for example, your health or your wealth, explicitly insert the human in the loop and explicitly ensure that the human is not just blindly clicking yes, as we are wont to do. So we need to ensure that we don't surrender agency to the agent. Hey, the agent told me XYZ. It must be smart. I'm busy. Let me just hit confirm. We have to understand that the agent may have done something wrong and scrutinize that action. That whole trust but verify from Ronald Reagan's quote. So we have to enact some of those practices as users ourselves to ensure that bad things don't happen. And agents, among the weaknesses that AI in general has is that, of course, there's not a lot of long context memory. So it may be that when you and I first met, and it was 25 years ago, you told me that you had a nut allergy. And I remember that every time when you come over, I don't prepare anything but nuts. But that's constantly in my cache, basically. But what is the context or the cache that any AI has? And it will not extend back to our first meeting 25 years ago when you confided you had a nut allergy. And you're coming over to dinner and I make something with nuts as ingredients and you suffer. So these sorts of things, we have to realize the limitations of AI, and it will be a long time before AI has that same level, that same world model level of understanding that we human beings have. And knowing that, we have to ensure that human beings stay in the loop as much as possible. And as you just pointed out, when we do deploy these AI agents, begin to do so very judiciously in very controlled environments.
Yeah, I think the context window issue is particularly interesting because, as you point out, can be too short in the case of your nut allergy, but it can also be too long where it doesn't get updated or information that's relevant. We don't know what the context window is in any given interaction with the agent. So we don't know what the context window is for our agent, but we more importantly do not know what the context window is for the agent our agent is talking to or the system our agent is talking to. So it's another parameter. Are the context windows for the agents easily programmable?
Yeah, you can have context windows which you'll give token budgets based on the problems that you're trying to solve. So those sorts of things are there. But I think fundamentally for listeners here, the example to bear in mind here is that these agents are limited in their understanding, and that we shouldn't surrender full agency to them as a consequence. And the simple example I gave in the most recent article was that imagine you hire a pest control bot, and you hired the pest control bot because the promise to do the work for you very cheaply for $100 and will give you a lifetime warranty that the termites would never return. And you think this is wonderful because the human exterminator only gives me a 1-year warranty and costs 10 times as much or 20 times as much. So let me sign up with this pest control bot. And the pest control bot promptly shows up at your house with a flamethrower and burns down your house and is now completely aligned, right? It did the job for $100. The termites are gone. They will never return. We as human beings already have this as our inherent understanding of how the world works. And never would a human exterminator turn up at your house with a flamethrower. So can we ensure when we are granting agency to agents that they have these contextual awarenesses in mind? And how do we ensure that they do? And does every step have that contextual understanding in mind? And do all the agents that it collaborates with also have the necessary contextual awarenesses in mind? And that's a difficult problem to solve.
If we return to our enterprise environment for a minute and think about for our listeners who are largely executives who are deploying AI within their organizations, and agents are certainly part of what they're using. If I were, say, using agents to populate our CRM when a salesperson has a call with a prospect, and I define that agent's job very, very narrowly, and I use it literally to extract the key field data that is gonna be needed in the CRM and to put that into the CRM. I could have another bot that monitors whether it's doing that correctly. I could have a third bot that runs iterative reports to make sure that it's making sense, that we're not having 1,000 calls by one person in 1 minute or something like that. So we could have some surveillance bots that are working. Is that type of environment what you envision as the early
Yeah.
adopter for enterprises?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's those simple workflows because the economic efficiency comes from rendering these workflows as automated processes and also rendering the collaboration as being automated processes. In the old days, if I'm doing supply chain, I'm going to contact the shipper, the buyer, et cetera, make sure that the logistics is coordinated. And I'm talking to 3 or 4 different humans, but I have a workflow. The humans I interact with also have their workflows. We come together at certain points and coordinate, then we move apart again, et cetera. All of that can be rendered with agents. And so if we keep it bounded to only perform the tasks that it's supposed to, that's great. We have to be also aware as an agent that's communicating with another agent, that agent may have some prompt injection that it might be doing due to some adversarial attack, and we need to be able to guard against those kinds of things. And that's where things like these constitutional classifiers come into play. But in the end, I think for executives listening to this, start simple, start small, but definitely start. It is very approachable using Python and API calls. It's very approachable, but start soon, start small.
Well, the example that I gave is my my fantasy use case because if I could unleash the talents of my sales team by removing the need to enter any data into the CRM, I would pay a lot of money to have that capability. The other thing I would love to have is the ability to connect disparate systems together using agents. So connecting the CRM and the support system and the finance system and so forth, so that we're not doing all of this data lift and shift that we end up doing to connect our SaaS systems and our internal systems and align all of our databases and normalize all of our data and all of that, and just offload all of that so that we have a unified view across the business systems. It starts to bring into a different question, I think. That's a lot of agents.
It's
How
a
do
lot
we
of it.
man yeah,
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead, Christina.
just how do we manage them as a sort of agent workforce?
Yeah. So of course there will be hierarchies of agents. So you're going to have an orchestrator agent supervising a subsidiary agents. And so here we're seeing also the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde aspect of it, because we're automating a lot of tasks. This is great. We're also incurring a lot of energy footprint as well. So each token is probably consuming about 4 joules of energy. How many tokens are there in the single chain of thought response? How many instructions overall? How many agents have cooperated to perform the task? And is the energy footprint a good trade-off for the task that was done? Human beings, of course, our brains operate on 20 watts, so not a lot. What is the environmental impact of having agents proliferate? IBM has announced earlier this year that they foresee a world where we have 1 billion agents, I think, before the 2030s, as of later here in the 2020s. That's a lot of agents. And if they're doing meaningful things that help improve our lives, it's a great thing. If they're doing trivial things that might be better or more efficiently done by a person, then we might want to rethink where we use it.
But that problem is the same problem we have with oil and gas, which is that the cost, the environmental cost or the societal cost, is an externality.
Right.
It is not realized by the organization that's using them or the individual that's using them. So we can't really assume that we're going to do any better with agent just making decisions about efficiency related to agentic use than we do with efficiency use with oil and gas power. Certainly not without regulation, but using that as an analogy for how do you make decisions about where to use these different agents? It seems if you take things to the extreme and you say, we don't have any drudgery work left inside of our businesses anymore because every low level activity is handled by an agent supervised by a person or a person supervising many agents, but that we have supervisory work is the new work, not the task work. It allows us to develop new products much more quickly and deploy them to customers on a much more granular level. Perhaps we won't reach the point where every product is unique for every customer, but we're going to have a lot more products that are tailored to increasingly smaller groups of our customers. And that increases the complexity of managing the business as well. So as you think about this environment of many agents doing many different types of things for the business, some top line, some bottom line, working across departments, across traditional departments. Perhaps we don't even have traditional departments anymore, but across the operational functions, we'll call them, of the business. How do you envision the organizational structure looking? Do we still have a top-down command control? Do we have a flat organization? What do you think the enterprise will look like when we're agentified?
I think it's going to end up being flatter. And the reason being is that the agents will be doing a lot of the work that heretofore was done by human beings. And the agents can manage, like, for any of us as human managers, how many direct reports can you have directly? If it gets to be more than 10, it's going to be tough to do. So you're going to build a hierarchy of departments. So you just have the 2 or 3 department heads reporting to you. With agents, this is no longer the case. We needn't have that hierarchy because it may be that Christina supervising 10 agents, and each of those 10 agents supervises 10 agents that supervise 10 agents. We just have Christina, and then she's actually got 1,000 agents working for her beneath. So organizationally, the organizations become much flatter. And here, again, we have to think about, so Christina, can you really confirm that every one of those agents is aligned with what we're trying to do? And herein lies the challenge, because the more automation we provide and the easier we make Christina's life, the more agents that are working beneath her, the less able she is able to provide the human oversight onto the alignment. And the alignment becomes a very intractable challenge. Yeah, when I give talks, I point out the name of Stanislav Petrov. And if you are not familiar with the name, he was a Soviet missile commander, I think back in 1983. And the technology hallucinated a nuclear strike on the Soviet Union from the USA. And Petrov's orders were to hit the fire button back so that the Soviet nuclear arsenal wouldn't be destroyed. But he had the presence of mind to call back to headquarters and to say, hey, my alarm just went off, but is there really a nuclear strike underway? And had he not done that, had he not exercised agency, we would have been in the middle of World War III. My call to practitioners of agentic AI is to practice the Petrov rule. It's really easy for us to surrender the decision oversight to the agents themselves, but we do so at our own peril. And these are things that we don't want to do. We wouldn't want an agent, if we told an agent, hey, I want to make 20% on my money in the coming year. What if it decides that it's going to do that by funding bank robbers? So we want to have oversight so that the AI, and as we've seen, and as you remarked in the opening remarks, Christina, it's very easy for AI to do the wrong thing. And every day we hear about instances of AI doing the wrong thing. Once agentic AI becomes ubiquitous and proliferates, the opportunity to do the wrong thing, it becomes massive. And we can't countenance reaching that. We have to, from the get-go, architect systems that are very well guardrailed.
It seems to me that today we have a lot of knowledge inside of our businesses about what we do, how we do it, why we do it, what its intention is, what its artifacts are, how to evaluate those artifacts, how to set goals that are data based or data oriented or drawn from the data to improve our operations and so forth. At some point, we will no longer have that tribal knowledge.
Yeah.
So how will supervision by humans be done?
Yeah. So this is a great point. And these are among the issues to be confronted. I don't have a good answer for that or any answer for that. But yeah, we lose tacit knowledge. This is a thing. Every organization has tacit knowledge that's not captured anywhere. It's not sitting in a email log or a relational database somewhere. But you and I know how to get things done. And that tacit knowledge completely disappears. And how do we replace that without having to go through a whole bunch of trial and error, which is very damaging?
That tacit knowledge, GAI Insights calls it your corporate intelligence, your business intelligence, right? It's about your cognitive assets inside the business, the intelligence, and they have a call to own your own intelligence, to make sure you don't lose your intelligence. They like to tell the story about Toys R Us and Amazon back in the early days of e-commerce. Toys R Us was the largest toy retailer, lots of stores. We all probably bought our children toys there because our children are adults now. So we probably were purveyors of the Toys R Us ecosystem. And when e-commerce came out, they didn't have any experience with it. They didn't think it was going to be a path that their parents wanted to use to buy toys. So they outsourced it to Amazon and in the first year and the second year. By the third year, they realized, oh, this actually is a real thing and we should bring it in-house. And at that point, Amazon said, sure, you can have it back. We now know everything about selling toys. We know how to price them. We know how to source them. We know how to market them. We know everything about it. So sure, go ahead, take it back. And they competed against Toys R Us, and now they don't exist at all. Their name might still be around, but we have no Toys R Us stores to go have our kids enjoy going up and down the aisles or what have you. And so that is a great example of what they're referring to. There is knowledge about how to do your business that's unique to your business. Toys R Us was not the same experience as FAO Schwartz. They both sold toys, but they were not the same experience. They were not the same target audience that they were appealing to. One of the things that makes our businesses unique is the way in which we go about doing our business. Do you envision that competitive advantage going away or shifting into a new type of competitive advantage?
This is such a good question, Christine. I think it is a new type of competitive advantage, but what we lose is still irreplaceable. And human beings have so much tacit knowledge, not only from the work that they do, but from societal awareness and even just instinct. And AI does not. AI has to have it explicitly programmed in symbolically or programmed in through brute force data scaling. And it's going to be very difficult for that to replace how we human beings work. And this is yet another reason why humans need to remain in the loop. What's more, humans still drive the economy. We make the decisions. We try and make each other happy. So there are these things that motivate society, again, which AI has no knowledge of, but we do. We know what works. I think that this further argues for keeping the human in the loop and not surrendering to the forces of economics and just going for what may be cheapest.
Well, the other big force here is data, right? AI runs on data, and the agents are going to run on data, and humans create data, systems create data. I recall you explaining to me that one of the key elements of your investment thesis is that the company needs to have a data moat.
That's right.
As you see data as not just a competitive advantage, but essential advantage for survival. So it's an existential advantage.
It is.
You want to talk a little bit about that and how you think that's changing as AI is maturing?
Yeah. So I think that, so my view of business is that data is the center of every business. And I think I could defend that point. I think data is at the center of every business. So if data is at the center of every business, what is your defensibility? Your defensibility is your proprietary data. If you have proprietary data, you can defend. If you don't have proprietary data, everyone else can compete with you. And we have to think about what's the problem we're trying to solve and what might be the proprietary data that's central to it. Okay, so I've got some proprietary data. Christina has some proprietary data. We're competing with each other. What might spell success for Christina versus Shomit going forward? Christina has some really key partnerships with other companies and is harnessing their proprietary data too. So now you've outcompeted me because you have access to more data, your decisions are more precise, you can foresee more, and you outcompete me. So when we think about all companies today, because all companies, I think, look up a little bit awestruck by big tech because big tech has so much data. And this is a daunting thing. How do we match that? We know our domain and we have proprietary data. We have partnerships with other companies that are basically in the same boat. And we've actually amalgamated our data with theirs so that we can have a source of data which might be able to stand toe to toe with big tech. And of course, we complement that with the freely available public data. There's kind of no end of that. Google a few years ago had launched a search engine for free data sources. This was in 2020. I think at the 2020 launch, they had 25 million free data sources in that little search engine. So who knows how big that number is now. But if I'm a retailer, for example, there's a lot of free, these would be the silly, simple examples, lots of free public data that tells me how retail will go. As it's coming up to the holidays, guess what? Sales are going to be higher. So even something as simple as calendar, and what are the local holidays here in America versus someplace overseas, and how might that influence? What's the weather going to be like? That too will influence how people may shop. How is the economy looking? All that is publicly available data. If the economy is turning down, maybe prices have to go down a little bit so that we can continue to capture customer share. So yeah, in the end, I think everyone needs to grasp that data is central to their business. It is their business. And of course, if you look at AI is all about data, period. High quality data from which we can correlate. So AI does not exist without data. And a practical issue that pops up for everybody is that this does mean that you need to have clean data, which is a non-trivial task. It's not as sexy as building the AI and driving these cool results, but without clean data that's been deduplicated and had missing data points imputed, etc., you're not going to have much to go on as far as raw materials.
Yeah, we really need to rethink how we build applications in the first place because the way we do them today data is exhaust. We didn't build the application to generate the data we need. We built the application to do something, and the data is what is the exhaust from doing that thing. And
Yeah.
that's part of the reason that it's dirty. The other is that we just created all these data lakes of whatever data we could get our hands on, and we didn't do anything with it, assuming that we would figure out a way to do that later. And now we're using it as if it isn't just, I think Claude Quiho said it's not a data lake, it's a data cesspool. I think that's what he called it,
Yeah.
which is not too far out of
Well stated. Yeah. We have to purify that water before we can drink it.
exactly. And Steve Jones at Capgemini points out that when people say data is the new oil, that's true only because it has to be processed and refined in order to be able to use it. And he said the problem with AI is that we move the consumption of the data to the wellhead,
That's right. Yeah.
which is a great way to think about the problem, I think. It was a very vivid picture of what that's about. Going back to something that you said a minute ago about people and what people bring to the party. People are creative, they're imaginative, they're interactive, they connect with each other, and they have relationships that are trusted in a way that is independent of the data. In fact, a lot of times it's orthogonal to the data. So that's a superpower area of humans, and AI is unleashing a new kind of creative superpower for people that is highly available because it's not very expensive to get access to AI tools, and it's not that difficult to put them into the form of a product. It's still work, but it's not as much work as it was a couple of years ago. So we're allowing people who previously would not have been able to marshal the technology necessary to build a product to do. And they've got these wonderful ideas and imaginations and relationships. Do you envision a new era of company types that are based on the creative applications of AI?
I think so. My definition of creative applications of AI extends to things as, I don't know, prosaic as drug discovery. And we're starting to see creativity there already. So many pharmaceutical firms and startups have already started to harness AI for drug discovery. Trying to think of this. In Silico Bio, I think is the name of the company. They have a lung cancer drug in human clinical trials that was completely designed using a generative adversarial network. And they're not the only ones. Eli Lilly, you may have seen recently, they actually launched a platform making their models accessible to smaller pharmaceutical companies. This is a very creative area, and it has real human impact because it helps promote human health.
I also see it on the media and entertainment side.
Yeah.
Creators on that side are creative tours de force, and you put a piece of technology in their hands and they're going to do things you wouldn't have expected with it because they just have, that's their superpower is creativity. So that's one area. A company I saw recently that I thought was a very imaginative use of AI is a company called Conservation 21, and it was started by a graduate student at MIT he's a mechanical engineer, and in his off hours, he was a professional art restorer. And he developed a way to create masks, the kind that we use for silicon chip development, because that was his graduate work was in sources for doing the lithography. He developed a way to create a mask that would be able to restore a masterpiece without actually modifying the masterpiece. And it can be applied with a removable adhesive. So you're layering these masks on top. It is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. His name is Alex Kashkin. It's absolutely brilliant, and he's lit the art world on fire because they are not just conservators who are the obvious and restorers who are thinking, "Oh my gosh, now we can restore artwork that we either couldn't have afforded to do before or were too fragile," because actually the mask actually probably stabilizes some of those materials, right? But they can also take works that they have in storage that they couldn't exhibit before either because they needed to be restored and they weren't significant enough to justify the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of sometimes millions of dollars it takes to restore them. And it's unleashing their ability to exhibit those It can also be used for doing things like identification of the artist, the original artist, when they don't know who the original artist is.
Yeah.
So that's in the professional world. You can imagine that there are private collectors who also have the same problem, that they have pieces that need restoration. So I think that's one that has captured my imagination recently, as well as in the digital media world, where I'm seeing pieces that are created that are a mix of, think of it as a cross section of a graphic novel, a movie, a music opera, and a story. So you're paging through this digital creation and you're having an experience like no other experience you've ever had. So these new categories of art that we haven't seen before. In the workplace, those creative solutions might be a little more pedestrian, but nonetheless still quite imaginative. How can we solve problems internally in ways we didn't think of before? And maybe an example that is obvious to many, but wasn't to the market initially, is the work of a company like Atomic Work, where they're turning the IT service management model upside down. So instead of you going to a portal for a centralized knowledge base to get the information you need to figure out how to recover your password, they bring the service management layer into the context of where you are. So in the application you're working in, so you don't leave and you get your support right there inside the application you're operating in. That's an imaginative approach to delivering support to our employees, whether that's HR support or IT support or what have you. And I think that kind of imagination is really exciting for our organizations because it enables us to think differently about operations.
Exactly. I think oftentimes we think that AI will be doing these mundane, repetitive tasks, which is why doing things like ERP lend themselves so well to automation. But when we talk about things that are creative, drug design is a creative process. In the media, we have creative processes. I think it was at Princeton, and this was published in Nature sometime within the past year, but they did circuit design. And the circuit designs that they came up with were bizarre, but they were actually efficient and they worked. But the AI had designed something which did not seem logical to the circuit designer. So I think these are some of the positive aspects of creativity that we might be able to harness from AI.
And that's an interesting one because that's the AI being creative as opposed to the human being creative. The humans calling on the AI to do something that they wouldn't necessarily have thought of on their own, as opposed to the other way around. I have an idea and AI is going to help me realize that idea. That's a different path. So obviously AI is transforming the enterprise. Where do you think it's going to be in the next couple of years?
I think it's going to be a lot of good places and probably also a lot of darker places. Emergent misalignment in AI and agentic AI, specifically as it will manifest, I think is a danger and a worry. This is the AI electing to do things that it was not programmed to do, doing not because of adversarial attack, but doing so just because of the nature of the beast that it is. And this is difficult to guardrail against as a consequence.
Pandora's box.
It's absolutely Pandora's box. And that said, I think the applications of agentic AI are going to be fairly broad. We've already seen agentic AI being used. There was the Danabot, the cybersecurity hack, and that was actually taken down by agentic AI. We've had numerous different academic studies published on provisioning healthcare through agentic AI. Today, if you think about when you go see your doctor, she'll say, "Hey, Christina, go to this lab, see the specialist, do this other thing, come back, and I'll look at all the results and tell you what's going on." Now your doctor, she can gain a superpower. She can actually spin off the agents to do the analysis of your radiology image, analysis of your lab results, and speak to you as if all these multiple experts had come together and informed your physician. So your physician can see maybe many more patients than she can see today. And given the fact that we don't have sufficient healthcare anywhere on the planet, wouldn't this be a wonderful expression of agentic AI? So I think in the coming years, we're going to see exactly that. More broadly, there's a big thrust, as you probably well know, within world models and world models of AI, which are trying to, as we talked about a little bit earlier, trying to bring awareness and knowledge to AI systems that we natural creatures already possess. And world models will be a fairly difficult problem to solve. It's not a trivial one by any means. And we're also seeing a lot of neurosymbolic approaches nowadays that are helping us deal with the limits of scaling that we might be bumping up into. I think neurosymbolic AI is very promising. I think orchestration, if we're going to be really mundane, but even orchestration within AI data centers to help us optimize the use of those data centers, thereby lessening our economic impact and energy impacts, et cetera. I think that too will be saying, world models will also be saying, and we'll continue to see the spread of agentic AI.
So let's draw a line from that future to today and give our listeners some advice. So for our executives who are early in their AI adoption journey or are anticipating adopting agents, they may have adopted other types of AI, but not agents yet. What's your advice for them for 2026? We're in strategic planning season. What's your
Yeah.
advice for them?
We don't need to get ahead of ourselves to where we're not comfortable with where we are. Getting back to I think the sage advice that you yourself had dispensed, Christina, is be practical. And if you look around your business, anything that can be statistically correlated is going to have an AI disruption to it. So bear that in mind. Absolutely get into the AI game. You cannot escape being in the AI game here going forward. Do it small. Understand that there are a lot of downside risks and guard against those risks as much as you can. And most importantly, ensure that everyone in your organization understands what AI is. I think, unfortunately, today, not only at the higher management layers, but even within the rank and file, companies don't really grasp what AI is. We oversimplify and think that it's merely chatbots when it's so much more. There's so many different models in AI, have nothing to do with large language models. And even within large language models, there are so many application use cases which don't require that I chat with the agent or it chat with me. All these automated agentic AI applications that we've been talking about. So I think my most important call to action for the execs who may be listening to this is strive to get educated and strive to get everyone in your organization educated as to what AI is.
What resources can you suggest to our leaders for learning more about those particular areas and also about you?
Yeah. So if you want to learn about me, I've got, of course, a blog page at the UC Berkeley website where some of the articles that you cited are hosted. So one can read through those. But for leaders who want to get educated, the resources are out there. I do nothing more than I just pull up basic Google News on my browser, which clears cookies, so it doesn't even know what my browsing history is. And every morning I'll click on the technology tab and I'll click on the business tab. And there will be something there which I had no idea about. And I'll dig into it. And that's my very scant attempt to try and keep abreast of what's going on. And there's so much going on. It's difficult to keep up with it, but at least you can have a rough feel of the pulse of what's going on. And we all need to strive to do that. This is the AI century. Never before in the course of history on this planet has there been an intelligence that's equal to our own, that's amidst us. It's here now. Can we be ignorant about how it works? What can it do well? What can it not do well? What does it need? What are its risks? Can we be ignorant to that? We cannot. So this is probably the most consequential thing in human history, if we think about it like that. Given that, don't we owe it to ourselves to be as knowledgeable about it as we can be?
Absolutely. And I also think it calls for a somewhat different approach to leadership. So as a leader yourself in this era of AI, what is your defining edge?
Curiosity, period. That's it. Yeah, we cannot sit on our hands. These are not the complacent days of the past. Things are moving too quickly. Our competitors will understand what those moves have been. If we do not, guess who wins? Complacency is not an option. Curiosity, we must be driven by curiosity. And that does mean wake up every morning, see what's going on. If you don't understand company X did this thing, what does that mean? Dig into it. What's more, you can even pull up your favorite chatbot and say, explain it to me. We have no excuse not to be curious, and we have to be curious if we mean to be relevant as professionals and as companies.
And for people who want to learn from each other, that's what AI Realized is all about. So we offer many opportunities for executives to meet and share their experiences with each other. So I would add that to some of the resources that are available to people. So thank you very much, Shomit Ghose, partner at Clear Vision Ventures, for joining us today and sharing your thoughts about agentic AI.
It's been entirely my pleasure, Christina. Thanks so much for having me. It was a thrill.